Hello, YouTubers. Joe Kersey here on Wednesday, July 30th, 2014 at 14:45 in the afternoon Eastern Daylight Time. And it has just started to rain fairly heavily. So perhaps you can hear it in the background. Perhaps not. With that little weather report out of the way, I must remark on the what in the medieval church was called the year's mind. After a person died, there would often be, well, there would be at least 2 masses, but sometimes 3. This was before the Protestants came in. Of which I am one. But you would have, after the person died and was buried, then you would have what was called the week's mind. That was sometimes optional. But there would always generally be a month's mind, and then after, but the 1 year anniversary of the individual's death, there'd be what's called a year's mind. And a lot of people would leave money in their wills to pay for these services and observances and so forth. But what brings us up is that a year ago today, my good friend Dr. Brad Bethel, who was an internist down in Laurinburg, North Carolina, he fell down the stairs and died. Basically brained himself and died. And he was 59. Yeah, he was 59. And he had been down in Laurinburg since 1989 and was greatly loved by all and sundry and by his patients. And it's a tremendous loss to the community and, of course, obviously a tremendous loss to his wife, Kyle, and his daughter, Bryn, who was my goddaughter. And so I sort of think about that. I've been thinking about that today. I know they have. Now, as my mother liked to say, let's talk about happy things. Now, one of my subscribers, God bless my subscribers, RPW 1958, mentioned in a comment that I had mentioned in the recent video about falling asleep behind pianos and under tables and so forth at various public events, public social events. And I thought, well, that might not be a bad thing to talk about. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Probably inter alia, but that's what we're going to start out talking about. And when I see, back in the early 1980s, I was involved with an organization called Stonewall Union, which is now very successful here in Columbus. And it was just getting off the ground then, and we'd have fundraisers. And this was at the start of the AIDS era. So, and also the start of trying to get full gay employment, anti-discrimination ordinances passed in cities and perhaps even at the state level and this, that, and the other. And eventually, I think they did pass one in Columbus, but it was unsuccessful the first pass in 1984. Well, it was a badly written ordinance. Actually, one of the supporters on the council who actually ended up voting against it said, he voted against it because it was a badly written ordinance, and it was. It was very ambiguous. Well, I think they've gotten that squared away now. But in any case, Stonewall Union had these fundraisers, and I think there are a couple of years there where I was giving them about $3,000 a year. I bought all of their first computers for them. It was technically a loan, but I forgave the loan. But they got off the ground. I was on the board for a while. I was not a good board member. I guess because I wasn't giving enough money. I thought, well, hell, I'm giving you all I can. Well, in any case, we had these fundraisers, and you had like an auction, and all these things. Sometimes you'd have one in a bar, and wet jockstrap contests, that kind of stuff. But anyway, this was kind of a sit-downy dinner thing, and it was in one of these hotel ballroom things. I don't think there was any live music. I don't know whether there may have been music. That was recorded music. You had one of these DJs flouncing around up front, blinking lights and all this stuff. Well, I was working. This is when I was working. And so if I'm out late at night, and this was waxing on toward 9:30, 10 o'clock in the evening, and still going strong. I was just tired. So there was a upright piano over against the wall. And so I went over there and I pulled this upright piano out from the wall about, well, what's the width of a human body? About this far out from the wall, I guess. And I went back to this piano and laid down and took a nap. And when things were getting kind of done, Paul came over and woke me up and we went home. Well, my word, I've got to get up tomorrow. I got to get up the next day and take care of human beings, I was tired. Well, yeah, I was tired. So I'd mentioned I also fell asleep under tables in restaurants. Well, that makes it sound in the plural. I fell asleep under a table at a restaurant. I may have done it at another one too, but I can't remember that offhand right now. But the restaurant in which I decided to take a nap, and this was a deliberate taking of a nap. Actually, it was also a deliberate attempt to escape just tedious, tiresome conversation. But we had gone out to a now defunct restaurant, which was called the High Lie in Columbus. Now, the High Lie would be what you'd call a theme restaurant in the sense that it really was, it tried to evoke the era of, sort of 1920s or somewhere between 1920 to 1950s Havana, Cuba. It had Spanish architecture, and you had, a lot of the Spanish, Mediterranean, the Caribbean-y, well, more Mediterranean-y actually, furnishings and carvings and wall hangings and, stuff from Spain and stuff from Cuba and the Latin American countries and so forth. And basically, it was a notorious hangout for all of these, big Buckeye rah rah rooter type guys. Hey, how you doing? How's them Bucks? That kind of crowd. So we had gone over there one night with a group of friends. Might have been 8 or not. Well, there were certainly 8 of us. There may have been 10 of us. And we went there. We actually went there fairly frequently. And in fact, they got so that when we came in, they just automatically seated us at this big table. Now, that was when I had more money than I had since. It's a lot of fun, but I had more money than I had since. Still, it was a lot of fun. And so, over the course of the evening, there being several contending storytellers at the table. All of whom basically, or each of whom, I guess would be more proper, each of whom sort of wished to be the center of attention. There arose a certain cacophony, of competing stories. Who to listen to, who to listen to, who to listen to, who to listen to. Well, the evening wore on, and I got tired. I got tired. With those with ears here. So anyway, it seemed the only way I could sort of mentally deal with this and also deal with having to get up the next day to go to work. At I had to get up at 4:15 in the morning. It's now getting on to 10:30. Was I just got out of my chair and I crawled under the table and I took a nap. And then when they closed down the place, then they generally kept this place open to about 1 or so in the morning. They stopped serving dinner, of course, at 10 o'clock, but they'd let you sit around and drink till 1 or so in the morning. When it came time to go home, of course, people woke me up and because somebody had to pay the tab. I paid the check and we went home. And now I'll tell you one more bad story about me. This actually does amount to kind of an act of minor vandalism. Well, it's hard to tell. It was at the High Line. This place was notorious for outrageous behavior. Example. One of my buddies who enjoyed a beverage probably even more than I do. He doesn't anymore, but he's completely stone cold sober now. But at the time, I wasn't there at this, but he told this story, and I heard other people tell the same story, so it's probably very true. It's completely in character. So he and I think it was I don't know whether this Stephanie was his wife then or not, but she later was his wife. Then they lived together for many years anyway, so it all sort of blends in. God bless her, she's dead. She's dead now too. She got meningitis in New York City and died she had Friedreich's syndrome and died within a couple of hours. They didn't find her body for 4 days. But that smelled good in summertime in Brooklyn. Well, that's neither here nor there. So it seems that they were celebrating a birthday or celebrating something. I mean, the crowd I ran with, everybody was celebrating something all the time, pretty much. And the highlight had these chandeliers, they hang down, and they have these sort of like, very ornate sort of, it's electric lights, obviously. I mean, they were originally designed for gas, but they've been converted to electric lights, and you've got the little glass globes and things, and so you've got these glass globes that are like bowls around each of the lights. Bowl, complete bowl on each of the lights. And these things hung down fairly close to the tables. By fairly close, I mean, well, around just a hair under 7 feet. In other words, if you got one of these big 6 foot 10 inch tall DEA agents, all they'd have to do is reach their arm up there and just put the subpoena in the thing. Or they could store their handcuffs up there. Oh, they threaten you. So, just a hair over or hair under 7 feet. So, they're sitting at the table. Well, my friend is sitting at the table. No, I shouldn't say they. This was the activity of one individual. And he was taking these rolls. Because the Highlight was notorious for their rolls. I mean, they were famous. The saltiest rolls in the universe. In fact, I knew a cardiologist that said when he had patients that would say they were going to go eat at the Highlight, he gave them a sort of an emergency pack of Lasix, 20 milligram tablets of Lasix. He said, now if you're going to go over to the Highlight and eat those salty rolls, just take an extra 20 milligrams of Lasix. Now, that way they wouldn't go into heart failure, because people would go into heart failure after eating these rolls if they had, bad cardiac problems. They were on the edge. Well, hell, not even if they weren't on the edge. Many of the time I came home and my legs were, my legs looked like they were about like this, after eating those rolls. Boy, they were good rolls. And honest to God butter, it was like, anyway, so my friends tried to toss these rolls up into the bowl, the bowl of the lights. And, even a blind pig finds an acorn every now and again. And so he got three of these rolls up there in one of these lights. And, of course, with those bulbs get hot. And a roll is a combustible material. And so, while this didn't burst into a vert flame, it did, however, start to smoke a bit. Now, it didn't set off the smoke detectors, thank the good Lord, because otherwise then, the sprinkler system would have kicked in, and that would have flooded the entire joint. But somebody was able to run over there and get this thing out. Retrieve those smoldering rolls before too much harm came. And before there was really too much ado, although, see, the interesting thing about the Highlight is, Obviously you're surrounded by tables. Sometimes they have smaller tables, sometimes they have big round tables that seat 8 or 10. And everybody at these tables, well, I shouldn't say everybody, but a number of the people at these tables around you are having every bit as much fun in their own way as you are at yours. So it's really not a condemnatory atmosphere at the high. Well, it's not. It's not now because the place is gone, but it wasn't then either. And you got to watch out for those verb tenses, don't you? And so another feature of that night was, see, when they had gone in, the night of the roll tossing incident, when they had gone in, they had said, this is so-and-so's birthday. And the woman at the counter says, oh, whose birthday is it? And my friend, I can't give you his name. He's married to a very prominent bond trader here in town. Says, who's this for? He says, this is for Richard Smegma. I'm Richard Smegma. Which would be otherwise known as Dick Smegma. And so, somewhere in the middle of the evening, after the roll throwing incident, interestingly, people came out. It's one of these things. They give you, they bring out a little cake and they sing "Happy Birthday, Happy Birthday, Richard Smegma, Happy Birthday to you." And so, and he says, "Call me Dick." Well, that wasn't his name. That's not his name. His name is not Dick Smegma. But he does email me, though, under the name of E. Normus Johnson. So that gives you an idea of what sort of thing we're dealing with here. So, the people at the next table, as I had said, people are generally willing to cut a lot of slack and have a good time. And this woman, and it's one of these blue-haired helmet-headed women. She leans over to him and says, I do hope you're enjoying your special night tonight. I do hope you're enjoying your special night tonight, Mr. Smegma. She said it with a completely straight face. Now, obviously, this woman had been around the block. She knew very well what was going on here. But see, it was that kind of place. And so, to finish up the story of the light vandalism, well, no, it really was. Well, you make the call. It seems that one night we'd all go down, sort of the suite of us that we ran around with, went down there again. And Paul and I had to take a leak. Well, you do, don't you? You're at a restaurant and you have to take a leak. Well, see, there weren't any restrooms on the actual ground floor. You walk down on the ground floor, but they're really interesting that there wasn't. I imagine that ADA people would have a hissy fit about this now. But in order to go to the can, you had to go down a flight of stairs, down a hallway, and there were the cans. And now, interestingly enough, the stairway was lighted, but the hallway down toward the cans, at least that night, was not lighted. Nonetheless, there was a line outside the men's room. There's almost never a line outside the men's room. Excuse me, you almost always have a line outside the women's room. Excuse me, but never a line outside the men's room. There's a line outside the men's room that night. So I'm thinking, I'm not gonna wait in this line and just take a leak. So I said, come on, Paul, because I've been there many times, in evenings for, when the Columbus Society of Anesthesia or Columbus Anesthesia Society had their meetings there. They had them there all the time, and I've been down in those cans in the dead of night, because the nights we had those meetings, it was an off night for the High Line. There were basically just very few people there, so they never turned the light. Turns out they weren't turning on the lights on downstairs that night either. We were there, so went down the hall, and we went down the hall in basically almost total darkness. It wasn't quite total dark. You could sort of see the lights at the end of the hall where we'd come from. So I just whipped out my dick and took a leak against the wall. It felt good. It felt good in so many levels, too. I mean, because, it's the High Line. Why can't you put a can upstairs where you get to the can? It was shortly after that they closed. I don't think my taking a leak against the wall had anything to do with it, though. Paul wouldn't join me. He wasn't sociable in that regard that night. Because he figured somebody had to stay within the confines of the law. I'm not particularly proud of that. Well, I'm going to tell you right now, that's not the worst thing that's been done down there in the lower. That had ever been done down there in the lower hallway of that High Line. I'll tell you that right now. That's not an argument to say it's okay. Well, I felt a lot better, so we went back upstairs and finished our meal and went home. And having told you these stories, I feel a lot better now, and I'm going to say bye-bye, YouTubers.